Hotels.com takes the drama out of booking a trip. With free cancellation on most hotels, the only booking drama is friend drama. Like booking something that makes everyone on your trip happy. Just remember, Jared is pro beach. Bailey will combust if water so much as touches her. Meredith has to be on the top floor. And Andrew has to be in the basement for some reason you will never ask about. Ever. Thankfully, there's an accommodation for everyone on Hotels.com. Booking a trip can feel dramatic, but with free cancellation, you can't go wrong with Hotels.com. Terms apply. See site for details.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Today, I talk with my ESPN colleague, Jeff Legwold, as we discuss his top 100 list. Jeff has been compiling this list for a long time. He's connected to the scouting world and knows his stuff. We talk about what he's hearing from people about various players that interest Washington. Keep in mind, there will be times you disagree with someone's list. Guess what? That's exactly how it goes in the scouting world. There is rarely unanimity on a guy, and Jeff has scouting reports going back to when Peyton Manning was coming out back in the day where scouts ripped Manning. But this is just trying to provide intel and insight leading into the draft. You can read Jeff's top 100 list on ESPN.com and follow him on Twitter at Jeff_Legwold. That's Legwold. You can read my work, of course, on ESPN.com and follow me on Instagram at John Keim ESPN. You can also watch our NFL Nation mock draft at 8:30 p.m. Tuesday, that's Eastern Time, on ESPN2. Check out my last two podcasts. I spoke with former Washington tight end Jordan Reed about his retirement and his concussions. And I spoke to former Washington corner Fred Smoot about his draft day memories, plus some late round gems talk with former NFL scout Tyler Roman. Before I share my conversation with Jeff, a couple things. I go back to this one and I initially dismissed Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah as a possible pick, even though I know that they liked him in this range. But I know they're talking to Landon Collins about a possible move to the same position. They'd have the same role. But this potential move does not take Koramoah off of their list, and they could still use Collins as a big nickel or strong safety, depending what they decide between he and Cam Curl. I do think it's clear they'd like to keep Curl at strong safety based on reading tea leaves. I mean, considering they're talking to Landon about making a possible move, see how it unfolds this summer. But they will be in the market for another free safety, and there are some intriguing ones out there. Trayvon Merrick is one. Andre Cisco is another. So I think they're trying to help that secondary, and you can help it still by keeping Collins in that big knuckle role. If you get a guy like Koramoah, his speed and his possible dynamic ability is just kind of different. So that's why he's going to still be a possible pick. You just want good players. Koramoah is a good player. At linebacker, day two possibilities include Ohio State's Pete Werner. His versatility and ability to be a three-down guy could push him into the second round. I think that's a little bit higher than I thought he would go when this whole process started months ago. But that's what you start to hear with him. If Washington doesn't go linebacker in the first round, there's a chance for a guy like Werner or LSU's Jabril Cox. A big question will be if they automatically take left tackle Christian Darasaw if he's available. They know that while there are offensive tackles in rounds 2 and 3 that they feel could be starters, there are some questions about Darasaw. But do you leave him on the board if available? And that's especially how you really stack up those guys based on what else you think might be there in rounds 2 and 3. And I still say, I think I said this last time, I think in an ideal world in those rounds, they might trade out of those, maybe trade out of a fourth or picks in this draft to pick up some capital for next year when they feel like there's going to be a lot more high-level talent available in those rounds. But that depends on the position, because at areas where they want guys, linebacker, safety, corner, those corners from Georgia, the second round, possibilities, there's guys that they like in those rounds, I think, that could help them right now. So it's not automatic that they're going to trade, because a lot of teams want to trade, but there are guys that they like at areas where they want to fill things. They have a chance. Listen, we all talk about this offense, but they have a chance to build a really good defense if this draft hits right. Improve on a really good defense. Anyway, at quarterback, While I've been saying all along they would look hard to draft one, it's what I've consistently been told from the time that they signed Ryan Fitzpatrick. I also want to remind you, it doesn't mean it will automatically happen. The one quarterback in the first round that I could see intriguing them is Justin Fields. And I say that mainly because I think he might be the one who falls far enough back that it could be tempting for them. And I don't think they would trade up if Trey Lance falls. That one I feel pretty good about. And the cost would be much less if Fields gets back into the top 10 or even out of the top 10. I'm not confident at all that he slips out of the top 10. But if he does, I think you got to really pay attention to that one. After that, Kyle Trask, perhaps Davis Mills. I've heard Trask's name a lot. Mills' name I've heard, not quite as much as Trask, but I've definitely heard it. I also don't think they will force this pick. I always go back to Kansas City because Ron Rivera is tight with Chiefs coach Andy Reid. Reid was in Kansas City for 5 years and made an offense work well with Alex Smith at quarterback. Wasn't a great passer. We know Alex's history, but he was a good quarterback. But he wasn't, but they didn't force the issue. I think in the time where he was there, they took 2 other quarterbacks in the 5th round. They really weren't looking for his replacement. Then when they saw that they had a guy there that they loved in Patrick Mahomes, that's when they pounced. Now, Washington doesn't have that same level of quarterback right now for Alex Smith, because Smith at that time was about 30 years old. They do have Fitzpatrick, obviously, and they have Kyle Allen and, of course, Taylor Heineke. I'm not saying they're going to wait 5 years, but I do think it will be why if they don't get a guy if there's not a guy they love there, they won't feel the need to just draft any quarterback. That's why there's some guys later in the draft that I'm not sure that would really interest them, because they have guys that they already like who can develop now that they feel they're more intriguing to them as far as developing. That guy has to have a legit chance at making the roster, and that means being obviously better in their minds than Kyle Allen or Heineke. Also, Steven Montez. Yes, they are intrigued by him. It's not having – they liked what they saw last summer, and you would hear this every so often, and Rivera even referenced it later in the year when he was having to make quarterback changes. The inability to see him in a preseason game really hurt. And I think they saw some stuff in practice, but they want to see it in games. So they're going to experiment with moving around a little bit. We've talked about that before, but I definitely know there's some there that want to see more from their quarterback because they are intrigued. So if they don't get their guy, a guy that they like, they can just go about filling other spots and then waiting for when their guy does come about, and that is when you pounce. Here's another way to look at it. If they stick with their first 4 picks, they could end up with a starting tackle, a linebacker who starts for them, corner, safety, another running back. It's funny because I haven't talked a lot about running back, but I know it's on the list, and I've told you it's on the list. I don't know where the sweet spot is for them is. I'm not sure where it's going to be in terms of prioritizing, which round they might be targeting, because I think it's hard to target a round. You have to let the board unfold, but it's a don't be surprised if situation. So if they went and got a running back, if a guy sitting in their second round and they pick one, don't be surprised. I'm not necessarily what I'm hearing, but I know that they want to improve or to add more at that position. So a lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff that I'm anxious to see unfold and to actually finally get some answers. Anyway, I'll have more on the next podcast, which will come out Wednesday morning, a bonus one, and therefore a shorter one. Anyway, after this break, I'll be back with ESPN's Jeff Legwold, who put together his annual top 100 player list for the draft. What does he have to say about some Washington targets, and where do they rank?
Support for this podcast comes from PayPal. Small business owners, turn your smartphone into a cash register. PayPal QR codes are the safe and easy way to get paid in store, and they deliver the same security and trust PayPal is known for online, in person. Even if you're a cash-only business, with PayPal QR codes, you can accept credit or debit with everyday low fees. There's no additional hardware or software needed. Generate your unique QR code from the PayPal app and display it on your device, or print it to display in store. Customers scan your code with their PayPal app. You only need your smartphone. Learn more at paypal.com/us/getqrcode.
Hey, this is Joel Corey from Inside the Cap. I know you're enjoying the John Keim Report, which gives you insider access to the Washington football team, everything you you want to know, which is going on with the Washington football team. Once you're done with that, check out my podcast, Inside the Cap, which gives you the ins and outs of the NFL salary cap and player contract negotiations. Check out these two products and other fine podcasts from Empire Media.
This show can be found on Podcast DC, the new local app with hundreds of options in local news, health, and, of course, of the DMV region. Download the Podcast DC app to hear all the Empire shows as well as the other great content. Welcome back. Now here's my conversation with ESPN's Jeff Legwold. All right, Leggy, that time of the year again, the Jeff Legwold Top 100, one of the best things we have on our site all year, always good, always informative. So I look forward to talking to you about this. But first I want to ask you, how different was it putting together the one this year compared to past? Was it harder? Was it different? What was that like?
John, it's funny. I mean, I've gone to the combine every year since 1987. So, February, I spend a week in Indy. It's just been part of my life for 3+ decades. And it was weird not to have a combine this year. I didn't go to any pro days. So it's the first time in a very long time I didn't go to any pro days. So it was an odd year in terms of, you just didn't see the people. I didn't see the scouts and the personnel guys that you've talked to over the years. And, you didn't have any of that informal information, as it were. You still can call people, but this time of year, everybody's swamped. And the one thing I did take away is there were two very different tracks teams took. Some teams, like the Broncos, tried to go to as many pro days as possible to cover for the time they didn't get with guys. And some teams, I believe the Rams, did not attend a pro day at all. So very different strategies this year. I think it will be interesting down the line to see how teams adapt when things return to the way they sort of were before, but how teams keep some of what they did. Because I heard an awful lot of people liked the Zoom calls because you got an hour with the prospect instead of just the 15 minutes at the combine face to face. So anyway, a very different thing, but I think everybody tried to make the most of it. But I think the biggest thing that fans should look for is guys with medical questions could fall on the board in some places just because teams could not get the same amount of information they got. People tried to do the exams virtually or exchange the information virtually. 150 guys went to Indy for medical checks, but that's 150 is far fewer than 330, in a normal year. So I think as a fan, people should watch where the guys with medical questions sort of end up, because I think those will be the players who are impacted the most this year.
Who do you have a couple of, because there are a couple of guys in that first round that you can look at with that, and there are a couple corners in particular, but who are some of the guys that you think are in that medical, that are in that medical question situation that could fall a little bit?
The widest variance I'm hearing on a top guy is Caleb Farley from Virginia Tech, the corner. He's had multiple back surgeries. The second one was earlier this year. I think that a player like him, he was a slam dunk, top 15 when the draft process started. And then when he had the recent back surgery, and, by all accounts, he's going to be able to play and all as well. But I still think some teams will, and I know some teams have more questions about that than they would have in a normal year had he gone to the combine and every team's full medical staff could have looked at him. Because even this year, the medical checks, teams could only send 2 representatives each. And normally they would have 10, 11, 12 people in that medical exam room. So I think Farley is one player. I will be very intrigued to see where he is selected in the first round, because as a prospect is amazing potential. He's only played defensive back for 2 years, and to be able to do it the way he does and with his athletic traits, I mean, a tremendous prospect. But I'm really going to be intrigued to see when his card gets turned in on Thursday.
I'm also wondering with some of those corner prospects, because there are some guys in the second round who may be available that might cause someone to say, well, I don't need to take a chance on him because there's good depth in this class. Yeah,
at corner, it's interesting, John, because overall this is a thin board. I think that's why the quarterback frenzy is at an all-time high, because overall this is not a strong board. From about the middle of the fifth on, you're going to see players selected. People are going to be looking them up, trying to find them on lists, whatever, because it's going to be so different team to team, because it is a thin board, and some positions are as thin as they've been in years. Defensive tackle is as thin as it's been in over a decade. But corner is the one strong, deep position, corner, wide receiver. But you could, there are draftable or very draftable corners deep into the sixth. I mean, you're well into day 3, and you're still looking at corners with very good draftable grades. I mean, I got well over 30 corners going into day, overall with draftable grades on this board, and that's really good depth, and that may cause all teams to say, we'll just hang on and get a guy in day 2.
Who are your top 5, top 10 guys on this list? Who are your top? Well, let's go top 10.
Top 10. I put Lawrence at the top. Trevor Lawrence is just phenomenal. The more I watched him, all 3 of his seasons, you just appreciate how good he was. I'm not certain he was appreciated even as much as people like watching the guy. A phenomenal prospect, just everything you'd like in a quarterback. And of these quarterback prospects, I think he faced the best competition, played the most high-stress downs in big situations. And you're talking about a guy in all of his high school years and 3 years at Clemson, never lost a regular season game. So, I mean, that's just unbelievable to me. But I start with Lawrence, Kyle Pitts at 2, Devontae Smith at 3. I don't care what he weighs, essentially. Jamar Chase at 4, LSU wide receiver. A bit of a surprise. I always have a curveball, scouts say, but Rashawn Slater is my number 5, Northwestern tackle.
There you go. There you go.
A lot of people Waddle, number 6. Patrick Surtain at 7. Penei Sewell at 8. Trey Lance is my QB2. I got him at 9, and Kwity Paye at 10. That's kind of my top 10.
So, and that's why I say, I think this year, I'm curious, when you're talking to teams, did you notice a wider variance on opinions on a lot of these guys at the top?
Yes. I mean, it's a wider variance overall just because of the board. Again, it's a thin board. So and it's kind of a top-heavy draft. I mean, there's a lot of agreement on sort of who the top 40 prospects are, but you could mix and match the names of those 40 in a lot of different ways. I think from the way teams, from me personally, just from talking to scouts, I have Slater a little higher than some people, and certainly Lance. He's QB2 for some guys, but I just think he's an underappreciated player, and had he played more than one game this past season, I think, he certainly would be. I think he would be higher on a lot of boards than he is. And to me, in terms of an NFL prospect, you get a free year almost because he's only 20. He won't even turn 21 until May. So you get a free developmental year for a guy who's going to be. He won't even be 25 if you take him in the first round and his contract runs out.
Where do you have the other quarterbacks? What numbers are they?
I have Justin Fields as my QB3. I've got him at 11. I ended up with 23 first-round grades this year. So Zach Wilson's at 24 for me. So he's his grade is at the top of the second for me. And, John, I think I should say the dirty little secret of the draft is there's never 32 first-round grades for any team.
23 is a lot, it seems like.
Yeah, no, I think it's a top-heavy board.
Yeah.
I think it really is a top-heavy board. I vacillated a little bit. I was sitting at 21 for a little bit, and then I redid some guys and ended up with two more. But and then beyond that, I think Wilson. I got Mac Jones at 33. Right in there, and that's after that, it's a big gap until the next group.
Because the next group is a group that would, if Washington gets a quarterback.
Yeah.
My guess right now would be if Justin Fields fell far enough and they didn't have to didn't have to jump high to get him, or you're looking at a day two guy. So the day two guys would probably be Davis Mills, Kyle Trask. Where do you, and those guys, I know with Trask especially that there's been interest there. With Mills, I've heard there's been interest. Where do you have those guys at?
I would throw Kellen Mond in the sort of that second group of quarterbacks. Mond is a player I like probably a little more than some too. And I think what Mond has is, you're talking about all these shorter resumes at quarterback. Mond has the long resume of this group. He's 44 starts in the SEC is quite the, that's quite the list. So, I got Mills down in Mond, Mills, and Trask. I got Trask in late day 2, early day 3. Mills is at 70, and I've got Mond a little above that. So I think Mond.
So
Mills, those three guys are in the group, and that's the big. There's a huge variance on that second group of quarterbacks. What teams think.
Really, yeah.
Some QB coaches really love Mond's potential. Mills is a guy people have learned to or sort of confirm that they like as they've gone through the pre-draft process. He really threw well at pro day. Players don't rise significantly because of their pro day, but when guys evaluators go, they're looking for confirmation at pro day, and they got that confirmation from Mills that he had a really good day in that regard. So, and
let me interrupt you for 1 second with those pro days, because with him, he's only had 11 starts.
Right.
So there is more they need to see, but I'm also guessing some of it is also, being there, feeling their presence, and then seeing how they interact. So what do you think really made a difference at his pro day?
I always say, John, those are prom night. You never look better than you do at your pro day. It's
I had a light blue tux on my prom night. I'm not sure how good I look anymore, but actually it was
in that moment, baby.
Light gray.
The light blue was you were rising on the board. It's sort of that feel. You're on stage. Everyone's come to see you. That's the kind of moment you sort of have to live as a quarterback in the NFL. You have to live with the eyeballs on you, and it's one of those moments where, and there's no crowd. It's quiet. Pro days are very quiet. It's really funny. There's all these people, and it's just that, how do you sort of work in that little moment, where you comfortable, where you chatting up the other guys, where you controlling the workout. Did you go at your speed? Some guys hurry up because they're all hyped and everything, but you can really tell the guys who can control the tempo of a pro day. It just shows that they're going to be the guys who can go into a huddle with 30-year-olds and tell people to shut up. I'm calling the play. It's that's part of being a quarterback. And people liked how he handled it. Actually, all of these top guys got good marks from people about how'd you do when all the eyeballs were on you? But, a lot of these guys have played in big games and, big crowds. It was not a big deal for them to do it.
Yeah. And, like I said, I think those guys, I don't like with Mond for this team, they haven't shown a lot of interest in him.
Right.
As you know, that doesn't always equate to whether or not you draft him. It's just the interest shown hasn't been there. So we will see.
Again, John, the variance on that second group of quarterbacks is all over the place. You could get 10 people who are adamant Davis Mills is the best of the next group. And you could get 10 people to tell you Kellen Mond is that there is a wide array there. So, but you only need one person to love you in the draft,
That's right. And I think with Mills, it's interesting because he was a 4 or 5-star recruit who only played 11 games. And, you saw flashes. Well, then you're now extrapolating or projecting out, well, if he had stayed in college and you build on those inconsistencies, now maybe you're getting a gem of a guy. Maybe if he stays another year, he's a first-round pick, whereas like Kellen Mond was probably always going to be where he's going to go. But he also improved
his resume.
But he also improved to his credit. Yeah. So it is. And,
I know college football fans get frustrated by the NFL draft, but I tell people all the time, it's about potential overproduction a lot of the time. And
absolutely,
it doesn't matter that you were all conference 3 years. Yeah, it's a chip in your favor, but college, I know I am very good friends with fanatical college football fans. I lived in Nashville for 10 years in SEC country. Fanatical college football fans often are frustrated by players they loved, and the guy gets picked in the 6th round, and they're like, what happened? Well, it's about potential overproduction.
Right. Support for this podcast comes from Wild Turkey Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Let's tune in to their one-on-one with Jamal, a real bartender from Old Fourth Ward in Atlanta.
I really get into the backstory of whatever I'm pouring, out of respect. There are literally years of experience behind these bottles. Wild Turkey, same recipe since 1942. If you want a true classic, this is what you want to order.
Wild Turkey. Wild Turkey Distilling Company, Lawrenceburg, Kentucky. Copyright 2020, Campari America, New York, New York. Never compromise, drink responsibly.
Hey everyone, I want to tell you about a fun new offer from Monkey Knife Fight that can enhance any sports experience, whether you're at a game, on your couch, or in a bar. It's a daily fantasy sports league that is easy to play. You can sign up on monkeyknifefight.com using promo code JKR and play games such as More or Less. Will an NBA player score more or less than a listed point total? You can do the same in baseball. Will a pitcher have more or less strikeouts than a given amount, etc.? It's fun. And every Friday it's Home Run Derby. Bet on 3 guys who will hit home runs that night. All 3 hit one, you share in the prize pool. Every week you can participate in their Eagle Eye Jackpot based on the PGA Tour. Choose from any sport, from NASCAR to UFC and League of Legends. And of course, once football rolls back around, there will be even more fun prop bets. This is daily sports betting designed for the average fan to use their knowledge and have some fun. Sign up now at monkeyknifefight.com and use promo code JKR. That's promo code JKR. Let's go to linebacker because that's another area of interest here. And one of the things that I've heard, and I want to get a couple guys I want to ask you about, Koromoa, because I think he's of interest here, Jameen Davis, some other guys like that. But it also seems like there's a gap with what people think of the linebacker position, because there is a thought like, well, some of these guys you could get maybe late first, and there's some other guys that'll be available in the second. How wide is the gap between that group and then the first round group? So, what's your take on the linebacker class in those first few rounds?
It's sort of that 31 flavors thing, because there are many good players, but each one may fit a team differently. Ron Rivera, former traditional linebacker, may look at the position differently than a team looking for a hybrid guy who can play all over the place. You just don't. It's sort of like what they think of each one, and each guy has a little something different about them, just because of the way defenses are in college football now too. Right. Because everybody's throwing the ball all over the place. It's a position where there's a lot of good talent. And Koromoa is one of my favorite players on the board. I had him at 14. When I was talking with personnel people about him, they sort of expressed this, well, I don't know if he's a safety or a linebacker. And my point is, figure it out. The guy can do a million things. And there's always a danger in that because you want a player to be good at something for you, And I think Isaiah Simmons last year is a good example of that. He was my number one player on the board last year, and he didn't play that much as a rookie because they were sort of trying to figure out what can he do. But I always think you don't sort of draft for just the guy's rookie year either. But you got edge guys like Ojulari. Zaven Collins is a bigger guy who I really like. He was my last first-round grade this year.
More of I've heard teams, and this is why I don't look at him as an option here, as more of a 3-4 guy. Did you hear a lot of that?
I did because he's big. That's the thing.
270, man.
Yeah, he's a big dude. So I think he's got enough athleticism to play wherever. I mean, I watch him return the interception for a touchdown on the game video, and really quality athleticism there. So I think you could do a little thing with him. Jameen Davis from Kentucky is another guy who fits today's league. He's about 234 pounds, very athletic, closing speed, can cover, willing in the run game to get in there. That I think those are the kinds of players people are really looking for now, because you almost always hear, can he cover a tight end? Right. When you're talking about linebackers now, because that's the game. It used to be, can you fill in the run game? Now it's, can you participate in the run game and can you cover a tight end?
Right. And I do know, like in this, I cover a team that has a former linebacker as a head coach. Yeah. And I think he talks a lot about positional versatility, but I also know the philosophy there is you got to stop the run first, because if you don't stop the run, the passing game becomes irrelevant. But we both know that coverage angle is a huge deal anymore. And I think the RPO game too, you want more of that speed at the position as well, and the ability to cover man.
And the issue is, you're before, when Rivera was playing, you were in base defense, sometimes first, second, and third down, depending on down and distance. Now you're in base defense, maybe one down, every 4. So what you do at linebacker is different now. You've got 2 on the field, most of the time. So they have to be able to do a lot of different things in your scheme to make that work. That's why, again, that it used to be 250-pound guys. Now, it's Jameen Davis, Nick Bolton, all these guys that are 235, 230, right in there. That's the linebacker's size now.
Where do you have Davis at?
Davis, I like him a lot. I've got him up in an early day 2.
Okay. And that's about
early day 2.
That's about where I've heard from him. And that's why I say, I wonder if you want a linebacker and you're like this team, you're sitting there at 19. And maybe
I got him at 27 right now, for example, 27. For me, that's early day 2.
Right.
Yeah.
So, but if you're like a team like Washington and you're looking at, hey, we could take Koromoa here, or you can try and trade back and get a similar guy at the end of the first or early second, whether it's a Davis, maybe I've heard, and I don't know where you have Pete Werner. I've heard his name a few times by
Barrett Browning, another guy.
Barrett Browning's another guy. Yeah. I think Werner fits what these guys would want. Probably a little bit more, but so I just wonder with a gap with that, like if it, if it would cause teams to trade down, or do they say like Koromoa is just this much better and more impactful maybe than somebody else? So that
and more versatile,
right? And more versatile.
You're thinking he can line up multiple places, whereas the other guys maybe, 1 or 2, and again, sometimes versatility is can work against a player because they want you to be great at one thing,
You always hear that, but he's good, but what's he great at? You heard that with Kyle Trask. But with offensive line, Christian Darasaw. what are you hearing about him? Because I hear both ways with him.
He is sort of that. If I think my line was, any offensive line coach who watches him in the run game is going to be in a good mood, because he just rampages people in the run game. And 15 years ago, that would have made you really a gold star. But now, he's got some work to do in pass protection. But I think he's the first round prospect. I really like him as a player, but he's much farther along in the run game. But has all the footwork, reach, balance. So you're saying, okay, once he gets some teaching, he's going to be okay at pass protection because he has the attributes to do it. So I think he's a great prospect.
So when you're looking at left tackle again, because he might be gone before Washington picks, I think if he's sitting there at 19, then the decision is, how do these second and third round tackles project to left tackle? Who are some project left tackles that you have on your list that you might say, well, if you miss on Darasaw, you can get this guy, because I think, what I hear is that he can play left tackle.
I got Darasaw at 13. I mean, I think he's just I think in pass protection, my favorite thing he showed was that he cuts the angles of the speed guys. And that's, in today's league, that's a huge thing. And he does it sort of naturally. So even when he puts his hands in the wrong spot and the rest of it, he has his footwork in the right place. But the tackles, it's really intriguing, because you've got all these guys who are down the board who are, Walker Little from Stanford, he's almost 6'8", Spencer Brown from Northern Iowa, he's 6'8". You've got these big framed future left tackles maybe who just need a little work, like I say, Walker Little from Stanford, he missed some time with injuries. Again, you're projecting,
right?
And I think he's a good day two.
Okay.
Good day two tackle, people to look at. But those are the kinds of players you're looking at. The strength of the board is the interior guys, guard and center.
Right.
There are an awful lot of those guys. So I think the run will take place on the tackles at some point as people sort of run out of graded guys at that position.
Right. And that's why I think, like, if Darasaw is sitting there, they would take him, because I think because they know they can get certain other positions in the second and third round. What's the one position that is not deep that you say, if you want a guy here, you better get him early?
Defensive tackles as thin as it's been in years.
You said that,
it's not a great. There are some safeties, but I think, again, it's what you like in a safety. It may be thin for some schemes. Wide receivers pretty deep, tight end very thin. I mean, I'm not sure people are going into this draft thinking, oh, we're going to get plenty of help at tight end, because it's just not there, especially after the first couple. Then after that, it's more of hope, pick and hope.
And because I'm assuming, obviously, Kyle Pitts, Freiermuth, would he be your second tight end, then Hunter Long? Is that how you have it, or?
I didn't have Hunter Long. I like, and it's intriguing. I mean, Hunter Long would be probably a fourth rounder for me right now, I think is what I had on him. I snuck Tommy Tremble in as my number 3 tight end, simply because athletically, to me, they didn't throw him the ball very much. Like, he didn't have a touchdown catch this past season, but when he runs routes and frames the ball, I think he looks great. And he already blocks better than everybody else at the position. He gets after it blocking. So I think he has the toughest piece already figured out and shows much more potential as a receiver than he's been given the opportunity in college.
And I know this team here, they've got guys who are trying to convert as pass catchers. They need a guy who can block as well. So that would be something to watch out for. Last thing.
That's a guy I'd look at if I was them.
Yeah.
I think he's tremendous as a blocker. I mean, he's
that.
tenacious. He locks on. Good. I mean, his footwork, he looks like he was taught as a lineman at some point. I mean, he really has good footwork when he's engaged. And I think he can be so much more as a receiver. But like I say, he was my tight end 3. Freiermuth, I have it 60. So I got him right at the bottom of the second.
So, and the last thing then, how much are you hearing, because of the way this draft is and because of next year, people are going to expect it to be a lot deeper. How much are you hearing more of a desire by teams to trade back? Because the problem is everybody always says that, we just trade back, but you need somebody to trade up. And if everybody wants to get those assets for next year, it becomes harder to then trade back. But do you hear a lot of that kind of talk? Like, hey, we want to load up for next year.
Well, I think, the old more darts approach, the more darts you throw at the target, the more hits you're going to have, so you want all those picks. But, the problem is, and again, this is such a thin board late that I think so many teams are going to be trying to bail in the 6th and 7th round that it's going to be harder to do it because, as a GM, you're going to need to find that one team who has that graded player up on the board still,
right?
Who wants to go get them, and that's going to be the issue. I think more teams are going to want to get out than want to move up. So, and it's going to be about timing.
And it's funny because I had even someone say, like, don't be surprised if you see some people trading a 3rd-round pick this year for a 4th-round pick next year, which would be the reverse of what you would usually do. But they said just the depth, the potential depth for next year, that teams will want to be in that top 100 because of the expected talent depth next year. But again,
and that's always a roll of the dice. You're projecting on spring grades and
all these guys going back,
and you're projecting from a pandemic season. Some teams played 6 games. Some, you don't have the information you usually have to project the next draft. So I think,
true.
To me, I wouldn't surrender more value to get less. But people have said that to me or they'll just take the throw-in 7th rounder in the deal just to get it done and make it look better. But I think so many teams are going to be trying to do it in day 3 that it's going to be harder.
There you go. Leggy, always great stuff. Everybody check out the top 100 prospect list by Jeff Legwold on ESPN.com right now. How many years have you done this now?
I started stacking players in 1986 formally. I had done a little bit informally before that, but I actually started talking to teams and scouts in 1986 in that area. Went to the first combine in 1987. So
there you go. You and Mel.
I just talked to Mel yesterday about some things. So he's in good shape. He rocks. That guy
he's great.
People should know he's a tremendous guy, and
he's a great guy. He's very helpful to anybody, and just very passionate about what he does. And I think that
I was just going to say we should all be as passionate about our job, and honestly, he and Joel Bucksbaum kind of created this.
Weekly, man. Yeah.
Joel died years ago, but he and Mel carved it out, really, when you think, and Paul Zimmerman, those 3 guys really sort of made this, that you didn't have to be in the league to scout players, that you could still do it. And, I'm sorry I'm dragging on, but, to do this before the internet, I'm not sure people can appreciate. I used to have to get heights and weights on individual guys one at a time, and even that would take days. So just to get a guy's height and weight. So it's different. It
is very different to have to, because you have to call the schools for that stuff too. And you're doing that before a lot of people probably had fax machines as well. So
I used to have a lot of VHS tape laying around. So no more.
Yeah. And I still have the Pro Football Weekly draft guides by Joel Bucksbaum in my office. So I still got it.
When I used to go to the draft back in the day at Madison Square Garden, it always seemed that they put me right in front of Joel. So we'd be chatting up during the draft, but because he always sat right behind me.
There you go. Leggy, thanks, man. Great stuff. As always, appreciate it. Everybody check it out.
You're awesome, man. Thank you.
Support for this podcast comes from CDW and Intel. At CDW, we get that even the biggest jobs need to fit on your lap.
It's true. My entire workday happens right here on my lap.
And you can get it done faster with the performance and security of a device configured by CDW and powered by the built-for-business Intel vPro platform.
Nice.
Are you done yet, Mommy?
More time for story time.
An even better use of your lap. IT orchestration by CDW. People who get it. Find out more at cdw.com/Intel client.
Hey DC sports fans, we are the Beltway Sports Bros. I'm Matt Vazana and my brother Noel. Hey Noel, this is where you talk.
Matt, are you sure I should be talking? You know I can't handle this censored bullshit.
Settle down, Noel. We're just fans like you, talking all things DC sports every Tuesday and Friday.
And check out our Top 5 Fridays and all our awesome guests.
Like Doc Walker, Mike Jones, Ben Standig, Bram Weinstein, and many others. Subscribe to our show wherever you get our podcasts and check out all of the great shows from Empire Media.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Jeff for joining me, and thank you, as always, for listening. I'll be back with another episode Wednesday. I'll be explaining my pick on ESPN's NFL Nation mock draft. Again, that airs Tuesday night. And I'll share a couple draft day memories of my own. Talk to you next time.